Daily Detroit is brought to you by the community. Support our work at patreon.com/dailydetroit.
One of the things that the coronavirus pandemic has meant is that people have had to innovate, or what some might call
Pivot! Pivot!
with the aim of keeping people employed. One of those founders and companies is Better Life Bags, based in the enclave of Hamtramck. The custom bag company has grown over the years using social media and has put people to work in their local community, all the while adding to Detroit's fabric of fashion businesses and nonprofits. So today I talked with founder Rebecca Smith about doing business at a pace that's manageable when you have a family, which is part of the focus of her upcoming book. Then I'll update you on a couple things that you should know about around town. This is your Daily Detroit for Tuesday, May 12th, 2020. I'm Jer Stays, and let's get started. Rebecca, welcome to Daily Detroit.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I got to tell listeners that my producer, Cheyenne, is so in love with your product, and so I'm excited to talk to you and about what you're doing. How did you get into making bags in Hamtramck?
Completely by accident. So 11 years ago, it was a tiny little Etsy shop. It was just a hobby of mine, making purses and bags that I started when I was pregnant with my oldest son. It's something to do for fun. And it just kept growing and catching some traction on Pinterest and blogs. And then Instagram started, and social media really kind of advertised for us. And next thing I knew, I couldn't keep up with orders myself anymore. And I looked around at my neighborhood. We live in Hamtramck. Saw a lot of women, my neighbors, who couldn't get jobs outside of their homes for various reasons, yet they were very talented in sewing. And I started with one woman, hired her, saw the difference it made in her life, and realized that I wanted to kind of do this intentionally and see how many women in Hamtramck could, use a second income or a primary income for their family.
How has that journey been? Because Hamtramck is a city on the rise, and it's, I think, the most dense population-wise in the entire state of Michigan. But there are definitely a lot of economic challenges there.
Yeah, we've lived here for 11 years now, and I've seen a huge change just in 11 years. I mean, not just the jobs that I'm providing for women, but the blight in the city. We used to live next door to an abandoned house, and now you can't really even find an abandoned house in Hamtramck. Everything has been torn down or rebuilt. And so it's been really cool to kind of watch, have a frontline show to that, to get to watch the rise of Hamtramck and Detroit, at the same time. Has been really cool, really fun thing to watch.
For sure. So when it comes to what you're doing, how have you had to pivot? Because I understand that you've been doing very limited in-person retail, like once a week. A large percentage of your business is online. How has that changed, and how has the pandemic impacted what you're doing?
Yeah, we used to only open for retail once a week on Saturdays. Everything else was done online. We've obviously shut that Saturday retail time down for the foreseeable future. When the governor issued the stay-at-home order and was really emphasizing, if your business does not sustain life, you need to shut down. We really felt the pressure to just go ahead and shut down operations of making bags. We probably could have continued. Most of our seamstresses work from home, but I just felt like it was the right thing to do, let alone we were going to run into not being able to get any more supplies shipped to us. Italy had shut down. They weren't shipping any leather. So we were only going to be able to continue making bags for so long anyway. I really wanted to keep the paychecks going for my employees. I didn't want them, even if their work was down, I wanted them to have a consistent paycheck. And so at first, some of my customers emailed me and said, can we support you by donating money, and you can make face masks and give them to senior centers or cancer treatment centers or physical therapists? And I was like, sure, let's start this. So we opened up donations around March 22nd, right after this kind of all blew up. Took donations for 2 weeks. So we got 4 weeks of work for my employees that I was able to pay them as they were making face masks. And then the news came out, everyone should be wearing a face mask when you enter a store. And so we pivoted again, and we opened up listings that people could purchase face masks for themselves to use personally. So this pivot has really helped us to keep paying our employees and giving them some work to do in this time too. So I'm super grateful for it. But we are anxious to get back to making bags too.
Do you have any idea when you think you might be getting back to bags, or do you think that's still kind of up in the air?
We are going to start opening up again since we are mostly manufacturing and ship, like I said, 95% of things online. We are, as soon as we can get our next leather shipment in from Italy, who looks like they're about to open as well, we will be back online around May 22nd, we're hoping. So another week and a half.
Wow. And I got to ask, like, what is it about what you've been producing that's caught on with people? Because it's one of those things that I think a lot of people don't realize the power of social media and online stores and all of that kind of stuff, that it can really create a viable business connecting folks, not just like in your community, but, around the country and around the world.
For sure. I mean, I think what makes us a little bit unique is kind of a twofold aspect. We have a custom bag building process on our website, so you can actually go on and build your bag and see it change. You can pick your leather colors and your fabric, print. My husband calls it a video game for women. Like, it's really fun to go on. You can lose hours playing it. So that part is fun. The customer feels like they're building and designing their own bag, which they are. And then the second aspect, that they know the names of the people who are making that bag. Everything is done and manufactured here in Hamtramck. I think that makes people feel good about, where they're spending their money, and they can see the people that they're actually helping. So yeah, I think those two things together kind of are a unique aspect. Not many other people are doing something like that, and it kind of just took off.
Well, yeah, and it's been fascinating from this seat seeing both nonprofits and for-profits that have like a community aspect to it. I think about Andy DiDeRossi over at the Detroit Bus Company and their pivot to hand sanitizer. I think about the empowerment plan that's doing things with homeless coats. I think about Rebel Nell. I mean, there's just so many great companies and organizations that are really trying to like make an impact on like a very personal level. And, it's really interesting to hear your story as well.
For sure. I mean, we love Rebel Nell and Empowerment Plan. One of our former seamstresses now works at Empowerment Plan. And so it's really fun to see everybody being creative in this time and like pivoting to what A, will help keep our employees being paid, and B, is going to help the greater good of the community. It's been really fun to see.
So one thing that kind of came to my head out of all this is, do you think there's the beginnings of an ecosystem to really kind of bring different types of fashion or clothing to be made here in Detroit and Metro Detroit? Is that starting to move a little bit?
New York is always known for their fashion district. And I know there's lots of movements and underground things kind of bubbling up in the surface to have Detroit be as good as New York's fashion district. So that would be kind of cool to see. I mean, I personally love buying American made whenever I can. So if there can be more of that, I would for sure be a customer.
Well, one thing I wanted to talk about before we go is that you have a new book out. And that is a effort within itself to run a business and then also put together a book. What was the thought behind that? Because, in these times, it seems like there's been this huge focus on like hustling and like working nonstop. And this has kind of forced us all to kind of stop a moment and take a breath.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. The book is called A Better Life, and the subtitle is Slowing Down to Get Ahead. And it could not be more perfect timing that it's coming out during a pandemic. But obviously I wrote the book like 2 years ago. I had no idea that it was going to release during this time. But the whole idea, it's a memoir book, but with each chapter having a lesson that somebody can take and implement into their own life. And it's this story of how the business grew and how each of us has this dream inside of us, or this desire and this passion, and it looks different than the person next to us. So we can't look to them and try to copy their life. We have to look into our own lane, live our own life, keep our head down and work hard. But also, the business grew really slow and really manageable. And I have 4 kids, and I was still able to be at home with them as much as I, wanted to or could. The business maybe could be much bigger than it is now, but I've chosen more of a slow route, and a route that employs my family, employs 12 other families. And so it's good. It's looking at bigger is not always better. Slower can sometimes help us get ahead in a lot of different ways. And yeah, we are really seeing that this time during the pandemic for sure.
That's something that, although I host and produce this show, I'm also one of the, people who owns the organization behind Daily Detroit. And it's interesting to see that there is a lot of outside pressure constantly to grow as fast as you can, and that tends to ratchet up the bigger you get. But I've also found that if you lose your, North Star message, then it kind of feels like, well, what was the point of doing it? I worked in corporate communications for a while. I've worked for large media outlets. There tends to be this focus on speed in business. How did you resist that?
I wanted to be a mom. I didn't set out to build a grand business and to be a working woman necessarily. So I think I had maybe just this desire to not chase after, make this as big as it could possibly be. The temptation is there because I see other, missional businesses or give back businesses making like Inc. Fortune 500 or like Inc. Entrepreneur of the Year. And that is very tempting. Like that could be my face or that could be our name. But I desperately want to be involved in the lives of my children when they're young. And so I think having both of those desires has really helped balance each other. And that could be a different second desire for someone else. Maybe someone wants the freedom to travel. And if they built a big business, that would maybe not allow them to do that. Maybe it would. But, I think I personally just have a different value. And I see the value of being at home with my kids as much as I value growing the business. So it's just kind of those two things help balance each other out.
For sure. What is one of the tips that you would have for people in the thick of it so that, you keep the business being sustainable and doing what it needs to do, but also so manageable?
Definitely hiring help. I have a whole chapter in my book called We Can't Do It Alone. There was a time where I sewed every single bag that was shipped out. And about a couple of years ago, one of our seamstresses had her baby. And so I filled in for her as a seamstress so she could have a maternity leave. And I found out later that our head seamstress remade every bag that I had done during her maternity. She's yelling at me from the back. I did not. My favorite story, though, because I realized I've worked myself out of that job, which is good. I need to be only doing the parts of this business that only I can do, which is the vision and which is some of the design, and the social media is what I'm good at. So I need to hire people to do the shipping or to do the actual sewing, the parts that someone else can do. And we all work together to kind of make this happen.
It's so funny because I feel that those same pains myself, Rebecca. Well, if people want to know more, they can find your work at betterlifebags.com. And then your book is coming up next week, right?
Yeah, May 19th.
All right, excellent. Well, and that book is called A Better Life, Slowing Down to Get Ahead by Better Life Bags founder Rebecca Smith. Thank you so much for your time on Daily Detroit, and it's good to talk to a neighbor.
Oh, you too.
Here are some other stories that you should know about today. Your power bill is probably going up starting as early as Friday. The Michigan Public Service Commission approved what averages out to be a nearly 5% rate hike for the 2.2 million residential and small business customers of DTE Energy in Southeast Michigan. They approved the $188 million increase that works out to just under $4 a month for a typical residential customer. The company had asked for an increase of more than $350 million annually, but spending on coal plants was denied by the commission. This rate change does not impact industrial customers. A former state senator out of Detroit has died due to COVID-19. Morris Hood succumbed after battling the disease for a number of weeks, 10 days short of his 55th birthday. Reportedly, he had been making a recovery until his condition suddenly worsened. Hood last represented the 3rd Senate District, encompassing parts of Melvindale, Dearborn, and Northwest Detroit, as well as served the 11th District in the State House. His family has been active in local and Democratic politics since the 1950s. And Major League Baseball, without fans, could be returning to Comerica Park around the 4th of July. A proposal has been approved by Major League Baseball owners and sent to the Players Union to have a shortened season. According to multiple sources, there'd be an 82-game season with an expanded playoff and 2 additional wildcard slots. Sticking points could be player safety and protocols for testing, and since it's believed the virus spreads very effectively in indoor spaces, modifications to clubhouses and training facilities. And of course, there's that ever-present question of the money, including how much players would get with a reduced season and no ticket revenue. But what do you think of a fanless ball game on TV? Send me your thoughts, dailydetroit@gmail.com. Well, that's it for today. Thanks for listening. If you find what we're doing valuable, consider becoming a member. It makes doing thoughtful, in-depth coverage possible. You can join our newest members at patreon.com/dailydetroit. That's patreon.com/dailydetroit. With that, I'm Jairus Days. Take care of each other, and we'll get through this together. Talk with you tomorrow.